Welcome to TradeTheMGuy.com. This is John. This report is for the 12th, and it didn't take riots and that. It just took a little international situation to really add to problems, at least from an economic standpoint. Fine, you ended up with the low CPI numbers that was expected from where oil was before. But then all of a sudden, you've got the Iranian tensions growing, the idea that it started spreading that members of the U.S. were being pulled out of the Middle East in preparation for an Israeli strike on Iran. None of that's good from an oil standpoint, and that is much better if you want to stall a Trump economy. Uh, if you're the opposition, because that will certainly do it, because that will spike oil prices to a level that we already saw that starting to happen. So we'll see if that continues to play out. That expressed clear weakness right from the top. Is not a short kind of activity as much as just sell the news kind of situation where you already knew that the CPI numbers were going to come in lower, which is what the whole market rise had been for the people who were at least paying attention versus the narrative. Though it was interesting, we do see that red states are having much lower inflation than blue states, which is a unique kind of configuration. Zero Hedge had a good article on that where it showed significant difference depending on where you live geographically on how the local governments accelerate inflation just by policy. And so it's an interesting one to pay attention to. And of course, you have coming up the Texas National Guard is already being deployed at what is it, San Antonio or Austin? I couldn't remember which one where they're going to have the ICE protests. But the oil situation and the geopolitical international is far greater concern, at least at this particular stage, because it looks like many of the governors are going to be active in preventing this ICE thing from escalating, unlike the BLM, where they just allowed them in the middle of COVID to gather in large quantities, and somehow they were immune from spreading it, and were allowed to do it. It was the strangest thing ever. But from an NQ standpoint, we got a long range to even getting to the 76%. So even a pullback at this particular stage is not going to be that catastrophic, but it's going to be a softening from a Treasury standpoint. It'll be interesting. The Fed, no counting on them to step in at any point, but this is a nightmare right here. That's a huge move from oil standpoint. Now, will they be able to rhetoric, soften tensions, suggest that it's not happening? You wouldn't get this kind of move if people didn't believe that it was, but that's one of those where preparing ahead of time from that standpoint, much smarter than holding off and waiting until after the fact, because this could climb well past the 78 highs we had before, and that would be catastrophic from an inflation standpoint, given how much progress had been made. So if this lasts more than a few days, all the gains of inflation and that will be wiped out pretty quick. That is a huge boon for the euro as they prepare for their war footing, because you definitely want to be in a euro during the war. Makes no sense, but the Treasury certainly wants to improve that situation because the Eurozone situation continues to be quite negative, but they're not backing down from this idea of wanting to take on Russia overall. They think they've got the edge on it. Of course, they thought they had the edge with Ukraine as well. I remember meeting with some of these NATO guys, and they were just convinced that Russia would lose in a matter of weeks. And it was like, I just told them it was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard. They told me I was out of my mind, and I'm like, well, you clearly don't read your history books very well, because it's been tried before. From a lot better minds. You go back to Napoleon on further, and it never plays out well. So gold not having a huge reaction yet, but it should still continue to spike, particularly if oil goes. But I would think that Bitcoin and them will stabilize, but it's going to suffer with the market early on in those kind of moves, and it already had been a bit of an excel ahead of where the market was already, same with ETH. So we'll pull back in those. Not bad. Is this catastrophic? Not yet, but the momentum of it can build, particularly if there's real strong belief that it's taking place. But from a more practical standpoint, this is beautiful to see because that magenta under 25 suggest your weakness. We had a brief pop up above it for one bar, and then boom, and then once below it again in the rising MBI white, you're going to break that 50% support, and then it's just a matter of how much weakness you get in here. And bulls actually did pretty well to hold on through this, so though this wasn't a whole lot of short activity, it was literally longs just not interested in buying anything given the uncertainty of it, and that led to a move to the 0%, satisfying that weak MBIY spike, because usually you need a spike that's a bit more significant to that. But this just shows you what international affairs can do pretty darn quick. And it was one of those risks that I keep mentioning because it's a significant one. And as long as things were quiet, everything's good. Now, my view, you're not getting along with Russia or they're not really quite meeting your things. But from a Russian standpoint, they want that oil price high because they're already giving deep discounts. So maybe they chatted with the Iranians not to be cooperative. Who knows? It's just interesting, but certainly giving them what they need because that boost will certainly help pay for a lot of extra drones in their war, as well as military contracts. From a 5-minute chart here, you can see we had the early spike. They even that out, and this is where the futures and options trade for the week, making its play. But then towards the end of the day, it was just let it slide from there. And then you can see as this became more and more apparent that the whole situation with Israel and the Middle East, you can't hide that kind of information. It just starts to spread too quickly, and then you make an announcement, telling families and stuff to leave the area. It never goes well from that kind of an announcement, but it's better that it made in public because it did give quite an advantage to those who knew beforehand. And so then you can see here the session trying to build back up from the European side of things, off about 25. So it's pretty modest at this particular stage. Could get a lot worse. And depending on how the narrative goes within the news cycle, we'll see if there's escalation or not. But, that's where these warnings are important to pay attention to. And the readings were pretty clear on following that. And fortunately, it's not anything dramatic, but certainly that oil situation is one to watch because that will have a broader negative impact on growth going forward. So, wrong timing for that to be taking place. As always, though, anything relevant, I'll put it on the team chat. Have a good one. Trade well.